Hello, welcome back to the other side, where we talk about trials, triumphs, and the magic in between, because that's where we learn our best lessons. Today, help me welcome Jeff Levine. He is the executive director at the Long Beach Rescue Mission. He is a father, he's a pastor, but before that, he also has history and a life that he, thank God, is willing to share with us today and share with all of you because it is quite the story. And when I heard a little bit of it, I could not wait to have him on the show. So thank you, Jeff, for being here today. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you accepting the offer.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity to come be with you, be with the community that you speak to. And my hope is that today will be encouraging for everyone that's listening.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really want to kind of just dive right in,
Mhm.
right? You have quite the history,
Yeah.
and being that my story, my ex's people, if they've seen my interview,
Mhm.
after being a millionaire, he went the other side and he ended up
Yeah.
on the streets on meth.
Yeah.
And when I met you, you shared a little bit of your story,
Yeah.
and you have quite the story as well.
Yeah.
You were actually on the street, I believe you said, for 14 years,
Yeah.
12 years?
So not so much on the street, but on
Okay.
on meth.
On meth,
So
okay.
yeah, I was 11 years old when I first started using speed. I grew up the youngest of four, and my older brother was 7 years older than me. And my dad was there, but he wasn't there the way that I needed him to be.
Right.
And we were very poor, and there was a lot of time to just kind of run around. So I walked in on my brother and one of my neighbors who were using meth, and I said, "Well, I want to try it." I was already smoking cigarettes and drinking, and
Yeah.
I don't know why they said yes. I don't know if they were afraid I'd tell mom or whatever. But
Yeah.
man, by the time I was 12, I was smoking speed almost every day.
Wow.
You're a 12-year-old, so you don't have a job, so you're stealing, and you don't want to get killed on the street, so you steal from family. And it was just a very broken, uh, you know, experience in junior high, high school, and it took me to places that I never would have gone, to do things that I never would have done in my right mind, um, and yet in the midst of all of that, there was, just a pursuit of God over my
Mhm.
life. It's like there were moments where God would put people into my life to speak truth to me.
Okay.
Grew up in the church, so I knew the scriptures, and um, I
You
knew
had a
who
base.
yeah, yeah, but I
Yeah.
ran, and I think I was running from a lot of different things, but one of the primary ones was just, the absence of my father, and, I can reflect back now and understand
Mhm.
why he couldn't be who I needed him to be,
Mhm.
and some of the struggles that he had. But my senior year of high school, he had a heart attack. He was 48 years old,
Wow.
and died. And as an addict, you do what addicts do. You try and run. I
Yeah.
mean, I think, all by nature are escape artists. We
Yeah.
don't like pain,
Yeah.
and we want to run from it. We want to
And then
numb
we just
ourselves.
create more.
Totally.
I know.
And
That's the craziness, right?
it really is. And so, yeah, I mean, I was sharing a little bit with you before the show of just, you know that something's wrong, and you're trying to get away from it,
Mhm.
but you're not allowing a work to take place inside of you. You're still trying to figure it out on your own. And so I joined the military after high school, and, found that you can't run from yourself.
Yeah.
I followed me out to Oklahoma. I followed me out to Texas, and ultimately was kicked out of the military for using drugs. And I get back, and my addiction just progressed. I went from snorting lines to smoking. In the end, I was shooting up, and
Wow.
I remember,
But that was a long time.
oh
Like, this
yeah,
is a long time. So, did your parents know when you were younger? Like, did your mom I
yeah,
mean, how did she discover it, and what
yeah,
did she try to do? I mean,
yeah,
because we could only do so much, right?
totally. Yeah, I think there is that you're hiding, you're trying to conceal, but you know, your kid's up every night for 3 days and then crashes for 12 hours.
Yeah.
She knew that something was up, and things come up missing in the house. Well, where's Jeff?
Mm.
It's I don't think you, it's obvious, except
Yes.
to yourself when you think that you're actually hiding something, and, and then I would get honest with her 'cause I knew I didn't want this, I knew this wasn't the type
Okay.
of life that I wanted, but then I'd retreat and come out and retreat, and I think one of the big things when God brought me out of the addiction, where there was this, like, aha moment, I remember I had been stealing quarters from my sister. She, collected state
Yeah.
quarters, she had these milk jugs full, and I just slowly stole them, and
Oh.
then she realized it, and, she came out into the living room, and she had this look, and I'll never forget it. It was like it was sadness, it was anger, it was hurt, it was confusion, and she
Yeah.
looked at me and she said, "How can you do this to me?"
Mm.
And when I started to come to that realization of the people who love me the most are the people who I'm
Yeah.
treating like crap, and the people who don't care about me at all are the people that I'm breaking my back for, like, that was like, "Oh, I don't wanna do that anymore,"
Yeah.
you know? And then I got to this place where all I could think about when I was sober was how to get high, and all I could think about when I was high was God.
Mm.
So, I was kind of a buzzkill to be
Mhm.
around at the end because at some point the conversation was gonna make its way back to God. But, that's a very, it just is a grind because I would fight in this mental space of,
Yeah.
"God, I want a relationship with you, but I don't know how to stop." And it was at that point I remember, there was a Christian bookstore over off of Bellflower and Spring, and I went in there, and I'd been really honest with my mom about where I was at. I relapsed or I'm doing good, and I prayed. I was like, "God, you gotta lead me to a book that's gonna change my life."
Wow.
So there's this book called Old Man, New Man, and it was on this display right when I walked in. I saw it, I picked it up, and I carried it with me, and I was walking down the halls, and I'm like, "Okay, God, you gotta lead me to this book that's gonna change my
Yeah.
life." And I'm standing there in one of the aisles, and it was like not that I heard an audible voice, but just this impression from the spirit of, "You've had the book from the time you walked in."
Wow.
And I went home and I started reading this book, and again, in that desperation, it's like, all right, I'm willing to do whatever you're telling me to
Yeah.
do. Like I just need out. And the first chapter dealt with fatherlessness and coming
Hmm.
to a place of acknowledging my resentment towards my dad, my anger towards my dad. That
Finally allowing you to feel.
oh my gosh, and how I needed him to be there to like, I don't know, not like a savior kind of a thing, but like just present, like
Yeah.
with me in what I was
It kind of
going through.
validated your feelings.
Yeah. And you orbit around your parents. So if they're not there, you orbit around someone. And I
Yeah.
had a lot of really broken father figures in my life that were people that I was getting high with. And it was crazy because it talked about learning to have empathy towards your
Yes.
your dad and kinda going back upstream and asking, "Well, why couldn't he be who I needed him to be?" Then you get into the history and it's like, okay, my grandparents fled Lithuania, Poland during World War II.
Mm.
His mom died when he was a teenager, like 13 years old.
Wow.
He watched his dad die choking on a piece of meat at dinner while my mom was pregnant with my brother.
Oh my gosh, tragic.
Inherits a $250,000 in property and a print shop back in the '70s, which was a lot,
Yeah.
and, but his dad he was an only child, his dad took care of everything for him, so he didn't know how to run a business.
Yeah.
So, max out the credit cards, get new equipment, business doesn't do well,
Mm.
take a mortgage out on the house,
Yeah.
max out the credit cards again, still doesn't do well, second mortgage, lose the home. I mean, we grew up and it was a slum.
And then he lives with guilt for
I
losing
couldn't
everything. Yeah.
imagine, right? And I remember I used to just I don't know, he didn't take care of his health, he didn't take care of his appearance, he didn't shower, like, there was
Depression.
depression, right? But when I'm growing up, all I see
Mhm.
is this guy that sits in front of the TV and smokes cigarettes all
Yeah.
day when he's home,
Yeah.
and,
Lazy,
li
like the things we hear. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and for like, so he died, he had a heart attack in our living room. um, 48, like, there were some similarities in that of, like,
And it's
that
kinda like he died of
trauma.
a broken heart.
Yeah, and I remember 48 used to seem so old to me
Yeah, yeah.
'cause you're, like, 17,
Yeah,
and you're
well,
just
it
thinking,
is.
"Oh, man, he's old," and now I'm like,
I know.
I'm gonna be 43, and I'm like, "Oh, geez."
It was
He
not
was
that
pretty
old.
young. He was pretty
Yeah.
young, but, so the second chapter talked about spiritual strongholds
Mm,
that Satan has in our life, these moments where we make a conscious decision to
yeah.
turn away from God, to turn away from his truth, and we allow these things to root into
Mhm.
our lives, and so the book said, "Get down on your knees." I got down on my knees, and it said, "Ask God to reveal the strongholds in your life," and it wasn't a vision. Like, you
Yeah.
know how you think back and you remember something? You
Yeah.
remember, like, a time at Disneyland and something that your kid
Mhm.
did. It was like that, but there were these, like, 7 distinct moments in my life,
Yeah.
right? Times I got high, sexual encounters, like, things where I knew the right thing to do, and I knew I wasn't doing it. I was making
Mm.
that choice to do it, and,
Isn't that interesting? I
yeah.
because I do too, right?
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, I know, Lord, but I'm gonna do it anyways.
Right?
Forgive me."
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
And, it said, "Renounce Satan in the name of Jesus and ask God to fill that part of your life with his spirit."
Mm.
And I did, and I woke up the next it wasn't a shiny white light
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
Like, I woke up and I started reading his word, and I've done that every day since then. I actually as my devotional, I've been doing this for 20 years. I hand copy sections of scripture.
Okay.
And,
Oh.
there's a passage in Deuteronomy where Moses tells the people, when you have a king, the king is supposed to sit down in front of the priests and to hand copy the law.
Mm.
Well, there's never a time in the Bible, in the history of the kings, where any of them did that.
Wow.
And so there's something about, like, slowing things down,
Mhm.
internalizing things, meditating on these things, the discipline of it. Um, 20 years later, right? If you'd have told me this would be my life,
Yeah.
I was jamming a needle in my arm, closing my eyes, praying that I wouldn't wake up anymore. And now I get to lead this incredible organization. And I mean, it's pretty wild,
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
pretty wild.
But it's like and that's why I like to do this because I want everybody to know that your story isn't your tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like that's your past. Our
Yeah.
tomorrow is what we decide we want to make out of it.
Yeah.
But honestly, I mean, I couldn't do it without God either.
Yeah.
And you don't do what you do because you're just great. I don't do what I do because I
Yeah.
just have this heart, right?
Yeah.
I do what I do because I suffered.
Yeah.
And it's like, I need people to know that you can suffer, but there's
Yeah.
another side to the suffering. There's
Yeah.
the lessons you learn and
Yeah.
the strength you build and the faith that just continues to grow into this like
Yeah.
magical power.
Totally.
Because when you have the faith of God, like you believe you have magic
Yeah.
and you don't
There's
know what's
a
going to happen, but you know it's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, there's a great quote that I've been sitting with, and it says, "If all you see is what you see, then you haven't seen all there is to be seen." Like, if I'm just looking at what's in front of me,
Yeah.
what's immediate, and we have to hold that stuff,
Yeah.
right? We can't pretend like life's not happening.
Right.
But if that's the only thing that we're seeing, and there isn't that sense of spiritual discernment to ask, "Okay, God, like, what are you teaching me in the
Yeah.
midst of all of this? Like, what am I not seeing, or how am I looking for your hand in what I'm experiencing?" Because
Yeah.
he doesn't promise problem free.
Yeah.
Like, you read his word, and it's not, "Hey, follow
No.
me, and everything's gonna be
It's like
great.
follow
You're
me
gonna
and be
have
ready.
money, and you'll have the person of your dreams sweep you off your feet, and the house that you want." Like,
Mm.
he says, "If you wanna follow me, you're gonna have to die to yourself and
Yeah.
take up your cross and follow me." I mean, it is a painful struggle that is filled with hope,
Yes.
and I think some of what's been going on at the mission in this last few weeks, really captures that, where you're like, here's this incredible tragedy
Yeah.
and, this beautiful space of healing and hope that's destroyed by one person's decision that, is impacting so many lives, but that we can also see, oh, God, you're in this in such a powerful way.
Yeah.
Help us sit in both of those things.
Yeah. And that so they don't know, right?
Yeah.
But Christmas Eve that you had a fire
Yeah.
at Lydia's house.
Yeah.
And the Lydia house is it's the transitional home,
And
right?
this is our 50-bed shelter for women and children.
Okay, so
Yeah.
is it transitional or
Sort of,
sort of? Okay.
yeah. I think you might be thinking of the Bridge house that's next door where graduates
Yes.
stay for
Okay.
like 6 to 9 months, but, yeah, we've got 2 programs, a 90-day case management program, it's a client-driven accountability program, so our heart and belief is that it's appropriate for us to have an expectation
Mhm.
and a desire to see a person that comes to us transition into independent living and
Yes.
to be equipped with all the life skills, all the soft skills, but to also have the accountability that says, we want that for you. So you got to want that for you because
Yes.
the bed numbers are limited and we turn 5 to 6 families away a day. So,
Yeah.
we want to help people in
Who
making that
wanna help
progress.
themselves as well. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
And then we have a 1 year discipleship life recovery program, which, you know, in short, how does being in a relationship with Jesus change everything?
Mhm.
How does it change the way I think of my own identity, how I relate to other people, how I sit with the traumas that I've experienced
Yeah.
or the things that I've done? And how does the gospel bring healing and hope in a way that changes my life?
Yeah.
And so that house, yeah, we December 22nd, I get a phone call at 10 o'clock at night. It's our program manager. And she's like, it hesitates on the phone. I said, "There's no good reason for you to be calling me
Yeah.
right now. Like, what's going on?" And she said, "The Lydia house is on fire." So immediately I'm getting my shoes on. I've got her on the phone. She's like, "Everybody's accounted for. Everybody's safe." And I was like, "All right, I'll be right there." So I get there. 8 Long Beach Fire Department trucks. They're up on the roof. All of the residents are
Wow.
standing outside. No socks and shoes, no jackets. I mean, they woke up to there's a fire, had to grab their kids and come down into a first floor that was completely filled with smoke
Oh,
and
wow, and their tree and the
find their way
gifts
out.
and the
Yeah. Well, and everybody thought, like the fire department thought, I thought that it was the lights on the Christmas tree. We had a
yeah.
live Christmas tree in there. Um, and 4 days later, one of the house managers is like, "Yeah, I don't think the Christmas tree lights were on." So we run the tape, and one of our residents walks over to the Christmas tree with a lighter, lights it on fire, tries to catch the drape on fire, makes sure the tree's on fire, walks away, looks back, and you just see this tree
No.
go up. And
Why
the
do you think the resident would have done that? What
yeah, I mean,
just
I
hating Christmas,
I
depression? Like,
I
what did they
I'm gonna
ask?
guess there's some mental health stuff
Yeah.
there. Um Yeah, it was really interesting. So she was still there, and we had the arson investigator come and
Mhm.
PD and took her into custody. And um, it was really hard for the residents to kind of sit with. Here's this person who is kind to me, who like
Yeah.
ate with me, prayed with me, and they tried to kill me.
Yeah,
What do you
yeah.
even do with that? Um,
Yeah, that
but
is a lot to sit with. I
especially
mean,
as a
you're
12-year
already
old.
and oh, it was no.
No, no,
Oh.
no. She wasn't 12, but
Oh.
we've got, a 10-year-old boy and
Yes,
12-year-old girl,
yes, yes.
15-year-old girl, and
Well,
it's
I met them,
yeah,
the kids, it
yeah,
was wonderful. But yeah, that's a lot
hard.
because they know they're already in a tough place, and
Yeah,
it's like, why would you wanna put us in a tougher place,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, so that is a big question, right?
Mhm.
Nobody in their right mind would do something like
Yeah.
that. Like, that night could have been very different.
Mhm.
The whole building's framed out in wood. We could have been preparing for funerals instead of renovating our space. And so last week it was really just this incredible expression of God's faithfulness. So I needed to move 36 people out for a couple
Mhm.
weeks while they renovate the upstairs and do the remediation, wipe things down. So I estimated it's probably going to be $50,000 to house 36
Mm.
people, take care of their
Yeah.
food for 2 weeks. I reach out to a major donor and Steve Bryson with the Never Forgotten Foundation, and I said, "Hey, we've had this fire. Would you prayerfully consider supporting this?" And didn't hesitate. I'll be there tomorrow with a check for $20,000.
Wow.
So Wednesday, this was last week, I hadn't contacted any hotels. It was like on my list. I need to find where I'm going to take them, but I
Yeah.
need them to know they're going to have to move so that they can get ready. And met with the families. I said, "Hey, we love you guys. We got to move you out for a little bit, and so we're going to get you a hotel.
Mhm.
We're going to take care of all the food, but I just need you to be ready because it's probably going to be in the next few days." And so this mom comes up after and tears in her eyes, and she's like, I mean, you could have just told us that we needed to leave and come back in a couple weeks or a couple
Oh,
months, but you're gonna put us in a hotel? I was like, "Marissa, yeah." Like, that thought never
yeah.
crossed my mind to say, "Well,
What, we go on the
go f
street
go
and then
figure it out
yeah,
for a
yeah.
couple weeks," you know? And, so 5 minutes after she leaves my office, I had been playing phone tag with a deacon from Faith Presbyterian Church, and we get on the phone, and he's like, "Hey, we heard about the fire. We've had a large state gift come in. How much money do you need?"
Wow.
So I tell him about this, and he kind of cuts me off, and he's like, "Hey, so it sounds like you need $30,000." And I said, "I mean, yeah, yes, that's where we're at right now." He's like, "Okay, well, let me make a couple phone calls to the other board members, and I'll call you back." At the same time, I get an email from the hotel manager at the Westin downtown.
Mm.
We do our prayer breakfast there. And in the email, he wants to talk about a new program. I'm
No.
telling you, you
God is
can't make
so
this stuff
good.
up,
I
right?
know. He's so
Of
amazing.
his kitchen staff baking bread to donate to the mission. And I'm like, of course, you like the hotel manager is going to reach out about bread. Like Jesus took the bread, blessed
Yeah.
it, broke it, 5,000 people. It was like God was saying, I'm going to provide for you.
Yeah.
So I get on the phone with him and I was like, "Hey, that program sounds amazing. Here's a situation that I have. I got to find a place for 36 people. Is that something you would want to partner with us in?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, absolutely. We've got this conference room. We can put walls up." And I said, these families have been through so much. Like, God has provided the resources. I'd really like to just get them their own rooms. He's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely." And I was like, "Hey, do you think, could you give us a good rate?" And he's like, "Oh, we'll take care of that, and comp a couple of the rooms, and just send me a list of names, how many rooms you need, and we'll get it all taken
Yeah.
care of." So the deacon calls me back. He's like, "Hey, we're gonna direct deposit $30,000 into your account, um, so that you can take care of these women." So in 12 hours, God provided $50,000 and 11 rooms at one of the
Wow.
nicest hotels in the city. And on Sunday at 3 o'clock, our residents checked into the Westin.
Oh, I
And I
love it.
tell you, the you hear stories like that, right? Of
Yeah.
just these like crazy,
Yeah.
God things. And then you live it.
Yes.
And I look at some of our staff, or I look at these
Mm.
residents, and there is this otherness to it where you're like, "Is this real life?" Like, the one mom sent me a picture, and it's her boy, he had just turned 10, and he's in the bed, and he's got his little TV remote
Yeah.
control, and he's got this Kool-Aid smile, and you're just like,
Well, it's like a
"Oh, good."
vacation for them.
And
Yeah.
good for them,
Yeah.
Many, if not all, have never stayed in a hotel
I
like that.
know. And I like I said, I met them because we
Yeah,
did the vision board party.
yeah,
That day they were like packing and
yeah,
still and so it was really fun to be able to let them like dream bigger and to share my
yeah,
story and cuz I mean when I told them, everybody wants to be rich, right? And it
yeah,
was like, we had a 60-foot yacht and a 4,000 square foot and their eyes were getting bigger and bigger when I was saying all the things that we
yeah.
had. I'm like, and now he's living on the streets on drugs,
Yeah,
and we all have a choice to make,
yeah,
and so I'm like, but it doesn't matter where you're at today, right?
yeah,
It could be different tomorrow. So it's kind of cool
yeah.
that they got to do their vision boards, dream big, and some of them had like a
I'm
hotel
telling
and
you.
vacations, and
Yeah,
and then they're and
it's
sitting
just
there. So
special, just
yeah,
special. And that idea of bringing dignity to the people that we serve, right? Because I think with homelessness, there's a lot of different postures on it. I think
yes,
there are a lot of people who have great empathy and compassion.
hmm
Nobody wakes up and says, I think I want to eat out of a trash can,
yeah,
for my dinner. And yet there are others who are like, "What's wrong with you?
hmm
Why don't you that almost that American dream deception of like, well, you just need to try harder. You just need to
yeah,
pick yourself up. Quit, and one of the leading indicating factors of the likelihood of a person experiencing homelessness is childhood trauma.
Mm,
I think we
I
talked a
know.
little bit about
Yeah.
the ACE study and, just how adverse childhood experiences, the more of them that you have, it exponentially increases the likelihood of a lot of things like
Yeah.
diabetes and heart disease, suicide
And
rates and
drug use. Yeah.
homelessness, um, and it's like, okay, can I have a category in my mind of, you know, what happens to the kid who's born with heroin in his system,
Hmm.
who bounces around from foster home to foster home, that doesn't have secure attachments,
Yeah.
who like, is there a place of compassion in my heart where that's okay, that's not just a housing issue,
Hmm.
right? That's not just an
No.
employment issue. We had, a young man who came into the mission, and that was his story.
Yeah.
They found him on the side of a freeway naked. He went into the ICU. I mean, his body was just trashed. Shows up, and I mean, he's late 20s when he gets to
Wow.
us, and he's got a walker, right?
Jeez.
Can't get up and down the stairs, so we converted one of our offices into a room for someone with disabilities, and comes through the program, incredible change.
Yeah.
Year of sobriety, gets back out, relapses, comes
Mm.
back in, does another like 6 months, and then, goes back out and he's sober for 2 years. Meets a girl at the church when I was pastoring at Bethany, gets baptized, in the
Wow.
middle of the pandemic. They fall in love. It's like, "Jeff, would you marry us?" And I'm like, not until you guys get some professional counseling. No,
Yeah.
no, I'm not gonna touch that one. Uh, they go to the Center for Individual and Family Therapy. They do premarital counseling. Counselor's like, "You have my blessing." I was like, "Great." Officiate their wedding. 6 months later, I had to officiate his funeral. He
Oh.
had relapsed and
Oh.
overdosed on heroin,
Oh
and you talk about, like,
God.
here's this young woman who you get married and you have this vision of what the future is
Hmm.
gonna be like, and nobody expects to be in that situation.
Yeah.
But that empathy to say, "Yeah, there's no silver bullet. Like,
Right.
there's no one program that's gonna fix everything." It's a complex situation that
And it's a
requires.
lifelong. I mean, you've had lifelong trauma. You need
Yeah,
lifelong treatment.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
every age there's healing.
yeah,
I mean, Jesus.
totally.
I didn't believe that I'd be healing my inner child so much. You're not healing
Yeah,
others. You're healing your inner child in order to help
yeah,
others. But yeah, it's
yeah,
constant. It's a constant. And
yeah,
like you said, you're in the Word every morning.
yeah,
I'm in the Word every morning. I do it a
yeah,
little differently. I listen to
yeah,
my motivational YouTubes,
yeah,
but it's all God's word just in
yeah,
different compilations, but
yeah,
I mean drilling that in my own mind
yeah,
constantly, it's a must
yeah,
because the world is loud
yeah.
and
It
there's a
really
lot of
is.
confusion.
Yeah. And I think it does, like, part of what I feel like I bring to the mission in terms of, like, I've been delivered from so much. And I guess it just postures me with, like, I'm not going to condemn
Yeah,
anybody. I'm not going to be picking up stones and throwing them at
grace.
anybody. Like, I am, I am only who I am today because he was merciful to me. Um, and I want that for, I want other people to experience
Yeah.
how the love that God has for us changes us, you know?
And serving has helped me, like, really
Yeah,
see because I
yeah,
I love to talk to these people, right? I love
yeah,
to have conversations, and they love to talk, and once they're healing, they wanna share their story, and
yeah,
this one woman from the Union, downtown LA,
yeah,
she was telling me that when she was younger, that her mom would beat her up if she found out she went to church.
yeah,
She wanted to go to church. Her mom would beat her because
yeah,
her mom was a drug dealer. And
yeah,
then her mom would use them to try out the new drugs.
yeah,
And I mean, just trauma after trauma. And
yeah,
it's like, wow. So, of course, she's going to become a young mother because
yeah,
she's probably running away from home, right? She meets this man who's going to save her, and then he
yeah,
knocks her up, and then he dumps her, and then she's got these kids, and
yeah,
she's what, 16. So it,
yeah,
and it's a cycle, and it's more common than people think,
yeah,
which is the sad part.
totally.
But they don't want to know. Like one of the girls when I did the vision board, she said, out loud. She wasn't shy about it, but she's like, "I tried to take my life last year." She was
Yeah.
only 10.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that means she was 9, and you're
Yeah.
just thinking like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
But that's why I work with the kids,
Yeah.
because if you can get them to see, like, this is
Yeah.
just temporary and doesn't have to be your life forever,
Yeah.
and there is hope,
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
maybe they
For
could
sure.
have a little more of it. And
Yeah, and that idea of hope, we've been really, kind of championing this, hope can't wait, right?
yeah,
It can't
no.
wait, and that hope is here, and we hear
Mhm.
that word hope, and it's
Mhm.
like, wishful thinking, like,
Mhm.
I hope, I'll get this job, or I hope my, you know, marriage will be saved, or I hope that I'll be this successful, but there's a possibility that it won't.
Mhm.
Where biblical hope is a confident expectation that God is going to act in ways that are consistent with who he's revealed himself to
Yeah.
be and that are consistent with the promises that he's made to us. So that when I talk about the mission being a place of healing and hope, it may be that those who come to us don't have that confident expectation that
Mhm.
there is a future for them, but we have that for them.
Yeah.
We have that hope
Mhm.
and are there, like you said earlier. This is a long game,
Yeah.
right? It's not an on-off switch.
Mm-mm.
It's people, and we're complex, and
Mhm.
we're relational, and we're emotional, and we're spiritual, and so that same uh, just posture of shared humanity,
Yeah. Because
like
we're
it's.
always gonna have heartbreak.
I know, yeah,
So we have to continue to have hope because the pain is still going to come.
yeah,
And even when we're over that pain, it could be
yeah,
great for a year, but then
yeah.
there's always another pile of poop to step in. It's like, now what?
That, the other thing about scripture is just kinda how it frames your worldview, and, everybody's trying to answer 4 questions. Doesn't matter what world, religion, worldview you have, at least you gotta ask these ones.
Mhm.
How did we get here?
Mhm.
Like, I don't know, it's pretty crazy when you
Yeah.
stop and think about how small we really are.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this place? 'Cause this place is freaking jacked up.
Yeah.
And I don't have to go far, but look in the mirror and see that. Is there hope? Right? Is there a redemptive solution to what we're seeing, or is this it? And then where do we go from here?
Mhm.
Right? But the scriptures in the opening of Genesis, it tells us life is a painful struggle.
Yeah.
Like it's by the sweat of your brow, it's just going to be hard. But then there's this last verse, and it kinda gets. I don't know if people catch it, but you get the gospel.
Mhm.
And so Adam and Eve have sinned, God sending them out of the garden. They were, previously naked and unashamed. Now
Mhm.
they're hiding, and it says that God made garments of skin for them. Now, it's the first time something dies in Scripture,
Mm.
and it's the innocent dying to provide a covering for the guilty, and it's God who does the killing. And you have the gospel, right? That God, his son, died so
Mhm.
that we can have new life, a new covering, where our sins are removed, where we can have a restored relationship with him. So you have the how do we get here? What's
Yeah.
wrong with this place? Is there hope? Where are we going? I long for people to experience what it's like to be in a relationship with the living God
Me
because it
too.
changes everything. It
It
changes
does.
everything.
It really does.
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic, and
Mm.
nothing against Catholicism. It
Yeah.
gave me my foundation.
Yeah.
It also kind of screwed me up a lot because
Yeah.
they didn't talk about angels and they didn't talk about those things. But
Right.
I've always felt this personal
Yeah.
relationship, like
Yeah.
with my father.
Yeah.
It's even surprising to me,
Uh,
how I feel about it. And if people don't have that, it's like I could see how they could be lost
yeah.
because it could be really lonely
Yeah.
sometimes. But,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
if you
I remember at the church, and so I did 12 years on staff at the mission, and then I got called away to be the lead pastor of my church,
Yeah.
and then was on the board of directors. But those 4 years were like, if you'd have told me that was everything I was going to go through, I wouldn't have signed up
Yeah.
for it. I'd have been like, heck, sorry, God, I don't. What? You're breaking up. um, like my first year, it was $500,000 worth of fraud at the school that we had.
Oh,
And
jeez.
then, you've got a politically diverse church because of all the church splits. It was
Mm.
like the winners stayed, losers left, new people came. It was kind of a very like diverse church in that sense. It's a 116-year-old historically conservative white church that's
Oh.
never had conversations about race
Oh.
or
Oh,
justice. And
jeez.
you've got George
Oh,
Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. And I remember one time talking to the church,
crazy time.
I was shaking.
And you're white.
I was new to these conversations,
Yeah.
right? And I first to own that, and then, a crazy election and then a global pandemic. I was like,
Yeah.
what's next, God? Plague of locusts? Like, frogs? What is
Right?
what is gonna
Yeah,
happen?
that is so
But
funny,
I
but
was
yeah.
in that place of just feeling like 2019, 2020, like that window of time, I felt so lost. But I was the one that was supposed to have all the answers.
Ugh, yeah. And not to mention, when you're in a new position, I'm sure
Yeah,
of power, right? It's
yeah.
you have that syndrome. Oh God. I just said it earlier. Um,
Imposter
Imposter
syndrome. Oh
syndrome.
my
Yeah.
gosh. If people
But
only
you
knew.
described it even
Yeah.
better,
Yeah,
right?
like a cockroach in a sports coat. Yeah, But those seasons come,
Yeah.
right? And I'm grateful. Like in this season right now, I feel energized by the work that I'm doing. I
Yeah.
feel like God has done a lot of healing, but he also broke me,
Yeah.
you know? And And I think in the midst of that brokenness is the opportunity to learn about who God is, his unfailing love.
Mhm.
He's with us even when we run from
Yeah.
him, right? He leaves the 99 to go after the one. He
Yeah.
relentlessly pursues us. He loves us. I have my 5-year-old daughter. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I've watched a lot of friends who are in ministry and like you try and insulate and protect and like,
Yes.
and then you see their kids go sideways because
Yes.
it's like, "Just let me out." So trying to find that line of like, I wanna teach you truth, but I don't wanna make things so taboo that you try
Yeah.
and hide them from me, and I need you to understand that I will always love you no matter what.
Yeah.
So my 2-year-old's inside of the bounce house, and, Scarlett, the older one, wanted to jump in there, and this was when they were both a little bit smaller, and I wasn't gonna let Scarlett in because I didn't want Goldie to get hurt. Scarlett loses it, like, in my face, screaming, so I push her down the slide in the most loving way that I can, and, you're waiting for her to regulate,
Yeah.
and, I kneel down in front of her, and I said, "Scarlett, do you know what?" She's like, "What?" It's like, "Even if you scream in my face, I will always love you."
I love it.
Next day, she's walking around, she's like, "Even if I scream in your face, you're gonna love me." And you're like, "Okay, all right, yes, yes." But every night when we finish praying, I ask her, "Scarlett, do you know what?" She's like, "What?" It's like, "I will always love you no matter what." I'm not gonna outlove a God who is love.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, his patience with us, the things that we do. It's like I know my daughter. Nobody I didn't teach her how to lie, how to be manipulative. They
Mhm.
come hardwired to do
Yeah.
that,
It's crazy, huh?
Just wild. But I've never loved as deeply either.
Yeah.
And it's like I think we get that little taste of it, but even in those moments when we feel um, the most lost, the most confused, the
Mhm.
most disoriented, he's with us. He's with us.
So what would you say to somebody who is lost right now?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there is a opportunity when we're feeling lost, um, to enter into a place of not just vulnerability, but authenticity. with ourselves, with others, but more importantly, with God. And there's a passage in the Psalms where it says, "Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your hearts before him. God is a refuge for us." And what I love about that verse is that it gives us the freedom to hold both of those things. Like, trust in him at all times. Like, no matter what, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's scary, even when you're confused. But you can also pour out your heart to him. You don't have to pretend like pain's not real. You don't have to pretend like this is something easy to navigate. That, you can be with both of those and look to him to be refuge. And like I said earlier, we're all escape artists. And in that lostness, we will turn to things that ultimately will destroy us. And they could be good things. It could be a relationship, but the way that we lean into that relationship for approval, security, that becomes the hope, or success, right? Somehow I'm going to buy my way out of my pain if I just have enough stuff, or if I can have enough experiences, if I can just, and all of it is a distraction,
Mhm.
right? I'm going to try and numb myself. Um, but we all snap back until we realize that there is one person who can truly be a refuge for us. Jesus says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and nobody comes to the Father but through me." And that if we want to experience life, we come to the one who's life. If we want to find our way, we come to the one who is the way. Um, and that doesn't mean that when you take that vulnerability and you sit before Him, that all of a sudden everything's perfect. He walks with you on a journey,
Mhm.
and that's depth of relationship, right? He's with us
Yeah.
not just when we've got it all together, but when we're at our worst.
Oh,
You still
yeah.
love us? That's
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah. And
Uh,
continues to,
yeah,
even though we're not listening yet. It's like,
right,
"Yeah, yeah, I'll get I'll get to it, I'll
right,
get to
right.
it, I'll come back, trust me. I
Yeah,
have free will, right?"
yeah,
It's really funny. I mean, I remember negotiating so much with God, like, it
yeah,
was like, "Yeah, he'll forgive me," and the Catholic thing, but I remember going to confession, and I'm like, "You say he knows every hair on my head. Like,
yeah.
why am I gonna go tell this man what I did wrong? Like, he already knows." So,
I know.
I was always kind of a rebel that way.
Yeah,
I do have one question.
yeah.
What was the straw that broke the camel's back, as they say, for you to finally say, "You know what? Enough is enough. I'm fed up, and I
Yeah,
need to change. I
yeah.
need change now."
Yeah, I think it was a combination of those things of, realizing I was hurting the people I love, realizing that I wanted a relationship with God more than I wanted to get high, but I didn't know how to stop. That is a very tiring place to be,
Yeah.
and you just get to this point of exhaustion where you're like, okay, God, I can't do this. Like, I need you to intervene in my life in a way that changes me.
It's just crazy because not everybody gets
Yeah,
there, and
I
you
know.
wish they would, but not everybody gets there.
Yeah,
They just But I do think it's a lot of self-punishment
yeah,
too when it comes to that point.
right.
They're not done punishing themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I was doing some guided meditation beginning of last year, and it talked about how there is this cycle where we're doing something wrong, and we know that we shouldn't be doing it,
Mhm.
and so we punish ourselves by doing it more,
Mhm.
and then it's like I'm trying to whip myself
Yeah,
with the
exactly.
very thing that I need to stop doing, I'm trying to escape, and then I feel bad that I'm trying to escape, so I
Yeah.
punish myself even more, and, you know, yeah, I just think it wasn't a a it was a process,
Yeah.
but I've got friends who, 20 years later are still getting high,
Mm.
and that not survivor's guilt, but you just wonder, why me? Why not them?
Yeah.
Or when them is maybe,
Yeah, and
when do
I
they
do,
get
like,
set
we talk
free?
about hope, right?
Yeah,
And God, and I still have hope. My
yeah,
ex will
yeah,
one day snap out of it and
yeah,
real just be tired.
yeah,
It's like it's gotta be
yeah,
exhausting.
yeah,
So, but yeah,
mm,
to each their own. You could just pray
yeah,
for them and
yeah,
hope they have that. Because really it's just peace. It's like it's finally finding some peace.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just wonder there's so many people in pain, and it's
Right.
just so sad. So,
Mm.
but
And then it goes back to community. And I'll say this, what I love about your podcast is I didn't, I wasn't alone to figure it out, right?
mhm.
Like I got into his word, but I also got in spiritual community, and I had, just these guys in the college group. There's one in particular. Every time they saw me, they'd ask me, "How many days do you have, Jeff?"
Mm,
And I never wanted to show up and be like, "Oh, I screwed up,"
yeah.
And I remember day 44, I was at the dope man's house, like trying to convince him to let me hit the pipe,
Ooh,
and he wouldn't. It was the weirdest
really?
thing. The weird, because like
Yeah, you
I
think they
read
want you
you, he
back.
wants you to
Yeah.
get jacked, right? So I get out to my car, and I just tears falling down my face, like, God, thank you,
Yeah, because it
because
had to be him intervening. I mean,
I
geez,
don't know
really, the dope
where would
man
I
not
be.
wanting to sell
I
dope?
was
Yeah.
really weird, and it got super awkward in there, and I
Yeah.
left because I was like, "Oh, this is weird." But same guy, it's his wedding. I'd been sober for a couple years, and I had to leave. He's walking around with his wife to all the tables, greeting people, and I went up and I was like, "Hey, Steve, I got to cut out, but I just wanted to say congratulations, man. Just really appreciate you." And he looked me in the eyes and he said, "How many days do you have, Jeff?" And it was, here's this day that's like all about you and all
Yeah.
about your marriage, and you're thinking about me. Um, that's that kind of community that we long
Yeah.
for, where it's like I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't have to have all the strength, and I don't have to have all the answers, and I don't even have to look to you to have all of those
Yeah.
things for me. But if we could sit together and just like acknowledge these things together, um, encourage one another, pray
Yeah.
for one another. Um, anyways, that's yeah,
I love it. But it's true. That's why I do it. And that's
yeah,
why my podcast and my foundation is one heart at a time, because we could only do one heart at a time. We don't
yeah,
have to think so large, right? Of
right,
course I think large,
right,
but it starts with just one conversation
right,
and one idea and one,
mm,
one heart,
yeah,
and who knows where that person will go with that idea or that inspiration or that hope,
yeah,
but hopefully somewhere good.
yeah. That's my prayer is, whoever needs to hear what has been said today will be able to hear what needs
Yes.
to be said.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for
Yeah.
coming.
Thank you for the opportunity, and just grateful
Yeah.
for you, for your heart, for our community.
Oh, I told the kids that I'm there, I'm like, "I adopted you guys now, you're
Mm.
not getting rid of me." They're all, "Good, when are you
See?
coming back?" So I'll be
Right.
back soon.
No.
But I want you guys to know I met Jeff at a realtor's event. They were talking about, the city and the plans they have coming, and they're doing a lot of stuff over there. And he had mentioned to me that, or anybody, he just said, if you guys want to come, if you want to tour the mission, give me a call. So I'm letting you know.
Yeah.
Give him a call. I gave him a call. I was touring the mission the following week. So he's available and he means what he says. And if you want to see what they have going on there, which is some great stuff and some new building and a new,
Yeah.
home for the handicapped males,
Yeah.
15 beds,
Yeah.
right? Just amazing stuff. And, unfortunately there was a fire, but now Lydia House is also
Gonna
getting a
be
little facelift.
beautiful. I know. I told God, I was like, not the way I would have gotten to the renovation, but I'll
But we'll
take
take
I'll
it.
take it. Yeah, let's get it done.
Yeah.
Let's get it done.
So yeah, you
Yeah,
could
this
see
is
they got some great plans
yeah, so
coming.
that's gonna be a new 60-bed shelter for women and children that we're gonna break
Beautiful.
ground on. It's a view from the behind, and that'll happen in September. We're gonna
Nice.
start the build on that, and
Yeah.
all the exteriors of the buildings are getting renovated right now. So it actually the timing of everything is kind of
Yeah.
all the contractors are there. They can jump right into the project. But
Yeah.
6 months from now, you come to the mission, it's not gonna look. I mean, it's
Hilarious
just gonna
though,
be
like you said.
beautiful.
Not how you would have planned it, right?
No,
But
I'll take
but
it.
hey.
I'll take it. Yeah.
See, there's always bad or good that comes out of bad, you just have to wait for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks again for joining us. And I hope you got some good meat out of this podcast and some information. Hopefully, Long Beach Rescue Mission's always there if you need help too. So always feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Take care,
Bye.
guys.